Chapter 17 of The Adventures of the 11 Cuff Buttons. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Devora Allen. The Adventures of the 11 Cuff Buttons by James Francis Thierry. Chapter 17. Holmes quietly hid behind a large beer barrel at the foot of the stairs, while I could hear old man Tudor rattling several bottles at the other end of the cellar, and talking to himself the while. "Let's see, here's the beautiful Amontillado wine from that lovely Spain that gave me my Teresa," muttered the aged dotard. Then I heard the sound of something gurgling in his throat, evidently the Spanish wine that he had poured out, as there was always a good supply of glasses alongside the wine-bins. "Now where in thunder did I put that diamond cuff-button?" came the voice of Tudor again, while I sat still on the top step of the cellar stairs, just inside the door, from which point I could see the tip of Holmes's long, lean, aquiline nose peering out from behind the barrel below me. "It isn't under the Munchner barrel. It must be under the Dortmunder," continued Tudor to himself, as I heard him laboriously heave over the barrel, and paw around on the cement floor under it, in the space between the head of the barrel and the raised ends of the staves. "Ah, here it is, the cute little diamond that nutty George has been after, which I have been keeping since last Monday to oblige a fellow sport, Billy Budd, but which I have decided must be taken out of the vulgar crude cuff-button, and reset in an engagement ring for Teresa, since she is so dippy after historical relics." Then I heard a long-drawn sigh of relief, as Tudor drew himself a foaming steinful of the Dortmunder beer. In a minute more he started back toward the stairs, and as he passed the barrel there at the foot of the stairs, Holmes suddenly jumped out and grabbed him with both hands, seizing the diamond cuff-button from him at the same instant. "Ah, I've got you now, old wine-bibber, old diamond thief! Look thou not upon the German beer when it is light yellow, or it shall surely get thee sooner or later!" shouted Holmes in triumph, while Tudor was so surprised and scared he could hardly speak. "Watson, you can unlock the door up there now, and we'll proceed to the Earl's usual place of business, and disperse unto him his 10th stolen cuff-button. You fooled me all right yesterday morning, Tutor, but by the brainless cranium of Barnabas Letstrayed, I've certainly got the goods on you now." I unlocked the cellar door, and stepped out into the kitchen, where the French and Russian pancake-tossers stared in astonishment, as Hemlock Holmes came marching up the cellar stairs with a firm hand on Uncle Tudor's shoulder, and then columned left in a parade through the dining-room on the way to the library. "Attention!" called out my partner. "Present cuff-button! Salute! Most noble Earl of Puddingham, here is your 10th and second last stolen gem." Thereupon Holmes laid the glittering thing in the Earl's hand, while that worthy fell back weakly in his chair and stammered, What? Is Uncle Tudor guilty too? Ye gods and little fishes! Up to the very last I had hoped that none of the disgrace of this robbery would rest upon his sturdy shoulders, but now I see that it has anyhow. And I suppose he claims that Billy Budd made him do it against his better nature, like all the other simps you have jerked up, eh?" "Yes, Billy Budd was in on this too," replied Holmes, as he carelessly lit another coffin-nail, and turning around, calmly blew the smoke in the face of Thornycroft, who had just come in. "But the old gent didn't have to tell me that. I overheard him conversing to himself about it down in your worshipful wine-cellar, where he had the cuff-button hidden under a beer-barrel. If Tutor ever expects to get along well in diamond-swiping business, he will certainly have to cut out the highly reprehensible habit of talking to himself, particularly when someone else might be listening. I guess that's all, Earl, for the present, although if I were you I would keep these 10 recovered cuff-buttons in some safer place than that dinky little jewel cabinet on your dresser, since a little bird recently informed me that the desperate William X. Budd, the author of all these atrocities, is about to visit Normanstow Towers tomorrow morning, and attempt to carry them all off for good. Be advised in time now, George." And Holmes quietly pushed Uncle Tudor into a Turkish rocker back of him, and walked serenely out of the room, his cocky old head in the air, and with me trailing humbly along behind him, because it had become the usual thing with me. "Watson," said he, when he had led me out through a side entrance onto the noble castle lawn, "something tells me that we should take a little stroll around these lovely flower-beds that Herr Blumenroth has been so assiduously taking care of. See, there's the old boy now, kneeling down by that geranium bed over there, while his bone-headed assistant Demetrius what's-his-name wheels the barrow full of fertilizer down from the shed behind the stables. Let's go over." We joined the elderly and phlegmatic gardener, and after joshing him a little about the beauty of the plants he was growing, Holmes began to ask him some leading questions about whether Lord Launcelot hadn't been loafing around the flower beds on the previous Easter morning, at a time when he naturally would be expected to be up in the billiard room, shooting his head off at his favourite indoor game. Heinrich was not at all backward about informing on the Earl's junior brother, and I gathered from his very frank remarks that he, Heinrich, did not hold a very high opinion of the said Launcelot's intellectual abilities. It seems that the latter had been loafing around Blumenroth most of the day Monday, and several times the gardener had caught him monkeying with his trowel, trying to dig up one of the flower beds in a very unscientific manner, which same monkeying had greatly exacerbated Heinrich's none too admirable temper. "It looked as if he was trying to hide something under the ground, Mr. Holmes, like a dog burying a bone," said the gardener to us. "And after he had kept it up a while, interfering with my work all the time, I could stand it no longer and told him loudly to beat it, which he did. As soon as he was gone, I quickly turned over all the earth in the flower bed with my trowel, but couldn't find a thing, so I suppose the simp must have taken it away with him, whatever it was." "Not caring at all whether it was one of the diamond cuff-buttons we have been after or not, eh? My, but aren't you the independent cuss, Heiny? Why didn't you tell me this last Tuesday morning, when I interrogated you among all the servants, huh?" "Because you simply asked me then what I knew about the stolen diamonds, and I told you quite truthfully that I didn't know who stole them, though I might have added just as truthfully that I didn't care a darn who stole them. Sufficient unto the job is the regular labour thereof, without helping quasi-detectives from London to do their work for them. I'm being paid by the Earl to take care of the gardens, and that only, while you're the guy that he's paying to find his cussed old cuff-buttons for him. I wouldn't give a nickel for the whole lot of them anyhow." And the gardener calmly turned his back on us and went ahead with his spading up, while Demetrius spread the fertilizer. "Gosh, that guy takes my breath away, he's so fresh. But then we've got all the information out of him that we need, so come along, Watson." Holmes then led me back to the castle, where we entered and proceeded along till we met Lord Launcelot, idly fingering the keys of the piano in the music-room. "Ah, good afternoon, your lordship," said Holmes suavely, as we entered the room, and Launcelot faced about on the piano-stool toward us. "This thing called music is indeed a delightful surcease from the dull cares of the day. But finer still would be the resolution in young men of noble lineage to keep their lily-white hands off of property that is not listed on the tax duplicate in their name, and to refrain from dishonest and secret contact with uncouth crooks from Australia, who induce them to forget their family pride, and to conceal valuable gems from the eye of the law. In other words, to come right down to brass tacks, you stole one of the diamond cuff-buttons, gol darn it, and I want you to hand it back to me before I become so brutal as to seize you and take it away from you." Launcelot, however, did not avow his probable guilt so readily as his brother's revered uncle-in-law had done, but laughed right in Holmes's face as the latter concluded his little speech of accusation. "Why, you old false alarm, you! Do you think for a minute that you can bluff me like that? I didn't take any of the cuff-buttons. Go on and guess again. Maybe the cat took 'em. Or maybe George walked in his sleep and threw them away down the road," said he. But his pleasantry was lost on Hemlock Holmes, who advanced a step toward him, and in menacing tones demanded the instant return of the final cuff-button. At this point the door from the corridor opened, and old Uncle Tooter came in, without any present contrition for his recently confessed share in the robbery showing in his face. "What's this stiff of a Holmes trying to hand you now, Launcy, my boy?" he inquired, as Holmes turned and faced him angrily at the interruption, and I held myself ready for an emergency. "Why, the old magnifying-glass peaker says that I stole one of the Earl's cuff-buttons. Wouldn't that frost you? I've been trying to get it into his head that he's struck a snag here, but he can't see it that way," replied Launcelot, rising from the piano-stool and brushing off his trouser-legs. "Well, he'll have to, anyhow, that's all," said Tooter, and he added, as he grabbed Holmes around the body with both arms, "Run like H now, Launcy, and I'll hold him until you're safe." Launcelot instantly ran out of the room at top speed, while Holmes and Tooter wrestled around for a moment. Then the former jerked himself away and chased out into the corridor after me, and up the stairway where I had started to pursue the recreant Launcelot. "Here, get out of the way, Watson, and let somebody run that can run," he yelled, as he overtook me, legging it up 4 steps at a time. The two of us then chased Launcelot up flight after flight of the green-carpeted stairs, to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th stories, while I nearly lost my breath as we came to the fifth and top floor, and saw Launcelot disappearing through a trap door leading to the castle roof. Up the narrow little wooden ladder we bounced after him, through the trap door, and out onto the broad spreading roof of the ancient and venerable Normanstow Towers. "Oh, gee! First down in the cellar, and then up on the roof! This detective business is getting my goat," I panted, leaning against a chimney top where I stood gasping for breath, while the indomitable Holmes pursued the fleeing Launcelot across the stone roof to the opposite side, and there cornered him finally in an angle formed by the battlemented wall surrounding the roof, and a small tower about 10 feet in diameter at its edge. Launcelot was squeezed up against the grey stone embrasure at that place by Holmes, who quickly forced the 11th and last diamond cuff-button out of his nerveless grasp, then turned triumphantly to me, his faithful but out-of-breath squire, while the spring breezes ruffled the sparse hair on his uncovered head, and the gentle afternoon sun shone down on as queer a scene as had ever taken place during our association, crying, "Well, here we are at last, Watson. We've got each and every one of the Earl's diamonds now, and our labours are over, with a large part of County Surrey as a smiling audience for the finale of our little detective drama, as we stand up here 60 feet or more above the ground. Now let's go down and acquaint his honour the Earl with the glad tidings before the wind blows all my hair off." He led the way back to the trap-door, and down through it to the stairs, with Lord Launcelot following after us like a whipped cur. End of chapter 17.